guys. Hope everybody's doing well. Hopefully you guys are just primed from the week so far that you've had of service. I told you guys there was going to be one more day of kind of assignments tomorrow. On Friday, I'm going to give you guys that day off for everybody. My juniors, my seniors, doesn't matter. You get Friday off. Doesn't mean that my seniors don't. They still have to be here, obviously, for the mission week activities. In fact, I have to be here as well. So tomorrow morning you might actually see me. But I will not give homework tomorrow because it's Friday, and that's just that'd be sad. However, you do have homework tonight, and it is to watch this. I will have some questions for you. Also, I'm setting up, this is a new chapter. If you guys saw, hopefully you did, you guys have a take-home test this weekend. And since you have the take-home test, technically you've had it since yesterday, so you've had plenty of time to start on it. And hopefully get a good chunk of it done. But that is going to be due on Monday. So Monday morning. In fact, I think I set it for 7 o'clock. So don't come in and be like, oh, it's due when I get to school. It's not. Technically, it's due at 7. That's when I set it. Should I have changed that? Maybe. It doesn't matter. You have plenty of time to get it done. What I would recommend is get it done before, Sunday night. Sunday night, turn it in. Okay, so I want to make that clear. You guys have a take-home test over chapters 11 and 12 that is due, I would say Sunday night. Technically, it's not due till Monday morning at about 7 o'clock, but Sunday night because you're not going to want to turn it in then. So today we are going to dive into chapter 12, and just like before where we did kind of 10 and 11, this chapter is kind of with chapter 13, and you're going to see why, because we're going to talk about non-renewable energy in this particular chapter. And we're going to continue that discussion in the next chapter when we talk about sustainable forms of energy. So we're going to talk about non-renewable and sustainable. So a lot of times I kind of combine these two a little bit, at least in the way that we're discussing it. Doesn't mean that we're going to combine everything. In fact, this week, and this is maybe one of the most important slides that we're going to talk about, this week you need to read chapter 12. You're going to have a chapter 12 reading quiz on Tuesday. Okay, so that's why I'm hoping that you guys have started on that test and have completed that test. It's a take-home test. I don't really feel that bad for you. But you're going to have that take-home test. It needs to be done, like I said, by Sunday night. Maybe you're going to do it tonight. Maybe you already did it. But it's got to be done by Sunday night. But it clears out space for the coming weekend because we're still moving. We're still getting stuff done. And Chapter 12 reading quiz, the entire chapter is going to be on Tuesday. Now, before you moan and complain, all right, the entire chapter is about 24 pages. It's really not that much. Now, to make this easier, just to help you out a little bit, I'm going to let you guys have that note card. Okay, you can have that note card front and back. Has to be a note card, but you can have it completely filled out front and back, as small as you want to make that print, to put as much information as you can about Chapter 12. So Chapter 12, again, it's only about 24 pages. You're going to need that to be completed by Tuesday. The Chapter 12 vocabulary is going to be due by Wednesday, and the reason that again we're pushing through that is because I want to get through chapter 13 as well. Hopefully a good chunk of it done that week also. And then we have the Secret of Life next week, which I'll explain what that is, but that's next week as well. And we're just running out of time. I don't know if you realize this, but there's just not that much time left. We have next week, let me make sure of this. And I'll remind you guys of this, but we have, this week obviously is done. Okay, then we have full week next week, so regular week next week, and then the following week, if I'm not mistaken, I want to make sure. Yeah, the following week we start our spring break, so we have a 3-day week that week, and then we have a 3-day week the next week, and then by the time those 2 weeks are done, guys, we're going to be looking down the barrel of May. I mean, there's just not going to be a lot of time left. So we need to move as much as we can. That said, let's continue on. I want to keep this at a reasonable length, and I want to get through quite a bit. So we're going to talk about, in this whole chapter, non-renewable energy, specifically fossil fuels, because when we think of non-renewables, that's what we should think of. The reason they're called fossil fuels is because they are the result. They are fuels that are derived from biological material that lived millions and millions of years ago. Guys, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. When we burn gasoline, when we burn oil, when we burn diesel, whatever it might be, when we do those things, we are burning the trees of yesterday. We are burning the trees from 50 to 350 million years ago. That's what those trees became. They became peat, which became coal, which became oil, which became natural gas. Literally, it goes in that order. So when we burn coal, oil, natural gas, all those things, it is fuel that was derived or that was created from the sun. It's energy stored from the sun from millions of years ago. Nuclear fuel is kind of interesting because it's derived from radioactive material that gives off energy. It's a fuel. A fuel is considered non-renewable because because of its inability to be replenished once used. And technically, nuclear fuel, enriched uranium or whatever, or plutonium. We don't use plutonium for it. Usually it's uranium. But whatever fuel source we're using, that radioactive material, it is non-renewable. However, we can extract so much energy from it, and it creates so little waste that it's often considered a very, very clean non-renewable energy. In fact, it is the cleanest non-renewable energy source. Now, worldwide patterns of energy use are determined, of course, by the resources available in that country, as well as the affordability. So there are some countries that have tons of resources. Venezuela, for example, the Gulf states in the United States, the Persian Gulf, areas of OPEC where we have lots of oil reserves. Okay, these are all going to have, again, tons of oil reserves, and because of that the energy is abundant and it's easy to utilize, and so they use a lot of that. Other places that don't have those resources, that have to pay high tariffs and taxes to import them, they're probably not going to use them nearly as much. It should make sense. Money rules the world. The energy of unit that we are going to utilize more often than not is the joule, usually in terms of gigajoules or 1 billion joules, or about, sorry, there should be a space there, about 8 gallons of gasoline for 1 billion joules. So gas is very, and this is one of the things that we're going to discuss, gasoline is an incredibly energy-dense material. It has a lot of energy in a very small amount. So who's using all this stuff? Who's using the oil, the natural gas, all these things? Well, you could probably guess that we're definitely using a lot of it. But 20% of the world's population uses about 50% of the world's energy supply. So, and when you think about that 20%, you betcha it's going to be the wealthier nations. It's going to be the nations that are more westernized, more industrialized, including ourselves. First world nations are going to use the majority. Commercial energy sources, those are those that are bought and sold, and subsistent energy sources are those that are gathered for immediate need. And when it comes to our energy requirements here in the West, we use a lot more commercially sourced energy, where in places where you don't have as much of that, places that are poorer in nature, they're going to consist of subsistence energy sources. They're going to use the wood at their disposal in their forests. How many of you guys? Let's just ask. How many of you guys, when you need to heat your home, you go out in the woods behind your house and you have to chop down a tree? Very few. I'd be shocked if any of them. Probably Tinsley. Tinsley's probably over there right now. She's chopping down the next tree, getting ready to stock up so it can dry out for the during the summer for the winter to come. But other than Tinsley, I bet you everybody else is just switching on the gas. Okay, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about us in particular. We produce 85% of our own energy needs, which is really nice, and we have that possibility simply because of our vast resources, guys. We are an incredibly large country. Depending on how you calculate the borders, we are the third largest nation on the planet, and because of that, we just have an abundant amount of resources. By the way, China kind of competes with us. Some people say China's bigger. Some people say that we're bigger. But we have, in that huge amount of land, we have lots of oil, we have lots of coal, we have lots of natural gas. So we create a ton of our own energy, and we utilize a ton of our energy. However, the remaining 15% is imported primarily in the form of petroleum. And the reason that we do petroleum is because of the energy density, like I said, and the ease of transportation. Petroleum or oil has the ability to be moved very readily and very easily. It can be piped, in fact. And some of that petroleum that we are piping in is from our great northern friend, the Canadians, where we have partnered with them and actually created pipelines that they drill this stuff out of the ground, and then it comes directly to us through pumps. That's just one example, but petroleum is probably the easiest to transport, and that gives it a lot of benefit. All right, I lost my cursor here, so I'm hoping. By the way, today's shirt is purple. Purple shirt today. You know. Okay, we're still going. Okay, we're good. So energy efficiencies. This is a really important concept because if we're going to talk about different energy resources and different energy sources, we have to think about it in terms of efficiency. Um, and really, not just efficiency as in like how well does it burn. It's more efficiency of two things that need to be considered. One, the efficiency of the process to obtain the fuel, and efficiency of the process that converts the fuel into work. So we can't just look at, like, let's say the efficiency of a petroleum powered automobile. We have to look at all of the factors of not only the automobile itself, but also how we manufacture the gasoline that goes in the automobile. And what we get is what's called the energy return on energy investment, or the EROEI. And the formula is really simple. It's the energy obtained from the fuel divided by the energy invested to obtain the fuel. The larger the EROEI, it's a horrible acronym, but you get it, the more efficient and thus more desirable that particular fuel source is. So read about this in your chapter because I think it's very interesting. Now, the main thing that we use energy for, I don't know if I should say the main thing, but one of the main things that we use energy for in the United States is for transportation. And guys, you can imagine why. I just told you that we're the third biggest nation in the world. Not only are we the third biggest nation, but unlike Russia, which is the largest nation, about half of Russia nobody lives in. Okay, China is very similar as well. There's like 3 or 4 big cities, and everything else is very sparse. There's just nothing. There's not a lot of people that live in those other areas. In the United States, we have tons of big cities. I mean, think about the 3 biggest cities that we have. They are as separated as they possibly can be. I don't know why they decided to do that, but literally the 3 biggest cities that exist they span across the continent. And because of that, we don't rely on public transportation nearly as much as other industrialized worlds because it's just too expensive to create. And what we do is we have private transportation. We rely on a network of roads and privately owned vehicles that can go on those roads. So gasoline makes up about 30% of the energy used in the United States. Gasoline has a very good energy to mass ratio. Again, there's a lot of energy in a very small amount of gas, and it can provide energy relatively fast. So the burning process, the combustion process, is relatively quick. Public transportation is much more efficient, as you guys could imagine. If a bunch of people are going to the same place, it makes sense to put them all in one gas-powered vehicle, as opposed to lots of gas-powered vehicles. Guys, again, this should make complete sense, but even if you have a little car, you're talking about a 3,000-pound vehicle, okay? And it's funny when you think about it this way. When you are driving to school or to work, if you're in that car by yourself, you are literally transporting 3,000 pounds plus you to get to school. Okay, how horribly inefficient is that? All right. Now, the vast majority of the work is going into moving the car itself, not moving you. It's going into moving the car. So if we can put just 2 or 3 people in there, what you're essentially doing, let's say you put 3 people in there, you're taking off 2 of those cars. So you're taking out about 6,000 pounds that have to be moved, making it much more efficient. So it produces large amounts of air pollution per joule of energy released, which is why we don't necessarily like the combustion of gasoline. 50% of all U.S. vehicles sold are light work trucks. This one fascinates me so much, and I wish that we were here right now so we could talk about it, because we have this obsession with trucks. The only reason, this is 100% true, the only reason that Ford has not declared bankruptcy, because they are financially in trouble. But the only reason they haven't declared bankruptcy is because they have the #1 selling vehicle in the United States, and it has been the #1 selling vehicle for quite some time, and that is the Ford F-150 series of trucks. Literally 50% of the U.S. vehicles sold are light work trucks. Everybody and their brother has a light work truck. I don't understand it. I've talked to you guys about it before. It fascinates me that we get these people, and I have friends that are like this. I literally have 2 good friends that actually, out of my 3 closest friends, all 3 of them have trucks. All 3 of them. I'm sure most of you guys, if you were here right now, I know Tinsley would raise her hand. Like, most of you guys are either driving a truck or one of your family members owns a truck. And it just fascinates me. That's perfectly fine, by the way. If you need that for work, if you need that really heavy-duty box-on-frame vehicle for work, I completely understand. But it amazes me how many people buy these luxury trucks which are really just luxury SUVs that happen to have a bed on them, that are super heavy, very inefficient with their fuel, and they buy it so that they can move a couch once every 2 years, and they can move the Christmas tree, from one part of the house to the next. I don't understand it, but a lot of people have these. They're definitely very popular. However, electricity is, and you notice that I had a Tesla image down there at the bottom, is the new kind of mode of transportation, guys. We are very much, and at a quick clip, transitioning to electrically derived transportation. It is a secondary source of energy. Electricity is a secondary source of energy. It is created from when a primary source of energy is consumed. Think about that. Think about any way that electricity is formed. The more traditional way is through coal-fired power plants, where you burn coal that spins a turbine that moves an alternator that creates an electrical current. So because of that, the primary energy source in a coal-fired power plant is the coal burning itself. And then the secondary source that's created from that primary source is the electricity. The good thing about electricity is that it's incredibly efficient. It can be moved very reliably from one place to the next. It's about 40% of all the energy is used to create and deliver electricity. Only about 13 makes it to the end user. So that doesn't sound very good, but we'll talk about why that's actually not horrible. Because it can be improved with the way in which we process that electricity, the way in which we create it. And again, we're going to get to some of the ways that can be improved, and why it's still a better source of energy. Because that's one of the arguments that they make. A lot of people make against electrification of transportation in particular, is that electricity still uses fossil fuels in order to be generated. And as we all know, the biggest argument to that is that not all not all electricity generation is from the burning of fossil fuels. In fact, that segment is dying off, while the onsurge of renewable energy resources like solar and wind are becoming so much more prominent. So how is electricity generated in particular? One, we take a primary fuel source, it's consumed to make heat, so it's combusted, it's burned. That heat energy is then transferred to water. That water, once it gets past 212 degrees or 100 degrees Celsius, it's going to generate steam. That steam can then be compressed, and when it's compressed, it can create kinetic energy. So that pressure can cause it to transfer the energy into motion. That's what kinetic energy is. It's the energy of motion. That pressure can be used to spin a turbine. That turbine then can be used to generate a current. That current then goes into the electric grid. Combined cycle uses a natural gas electric power plants where steam and exhaust gas is used to make the turbine spin. So actually, you're utilizing the gas. It's very much like a turbo in your car. You're utilizing the vapor or the combustion gas to give more power to the engine. That's what your turbo does in maybe your turbocharged car at home. Every power plant has a maximum capacity and a maximum electrical output, usually denoted in megawatts. So a particular power plant will have a megawatt capability or capacity. Now, continuing with electric generation, kind of continuing to talk about, it comes from primary sources like what we talked about earlier: coal, natural gas, wind or solar, and that wind or solar are becoming much more prominent. In fact, we are no longer really creating any more coal-fired power plants, and instead we are converting almost all new builds are going to wind or solar or some other form of clean energy. It's considered clean. Electric generation is considered clean at the point of use. Okay, so make sure that you understand that when you charge your iPhone at home, or when you plug in your hair dryer, or whatever you're doing, that at the point of use there, it's considered very clean, because no fossil fuels are being burned and no pollutants are being released at that point. However, pollutants are released, especially if it's from a primary fuel source. They are released at the point of production. So when electricity is being created, not when it's being used, but when it's being created, usually pollution is being released. Only about 35% efficient from fuel to electricity. So again, it's not an incredible efficiency rating. Only about 35% of the wood or the oil or the gas that we burn to create electricity actually goes to the final product of the electricity. However, once it becomes electricity, usually the appliances or the car or whatever it is that is utilizing that electricity is incredibly efficient, upwards of 80 to 90% efficient. So the end user is experiencing an incredibly high rate of efficiency. So looking at the overall system, it is more efficient to burn wood or oil. The energy sources that entails the fewest conversions from its original form to the end is the most efficient. So we don't really want to go from coal to heat to steam to electricity. Like that's just too many steps in between. If we can cut away some of those steps, it's better off. That's why things like solar panels, which take sunlight and turn it directly into electrical current, are so much more efficient. Okay, or when we take wind, what we're doing with wind is we are turning that turbine. And that turbine is turning the alternator. So we're taking away that whole steam component. We don't have to produce heat. We don't have to produce steam. So we're taking those things out of the equation, and we're making the overall process more efficient. Guys, the fewer the parts, and this is something you learn in engineering, the fewer the moving parts that you have in a system, the better off that system is, the more overall efficient that system is. So we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each one of these fossil fuel sources, because again, that's what this whole chapter is about. It's about non-renewable resources, and fossil fuels like coal, for example, are non-renewable. I'm going to let you guys get this down. It's already past 20. How that 20 minutes goes by so quick. So I think I'm gonna stop us here. I think we'll pick up on this on Monday of next week. Like I said, your reading test is going to be Tuesday for this chapter. So make sure that you read it through. I'm looking to see real quick how many modules you have for chapter 12. Chapter 12, you got 3 modules, but again, it's only about 24 pages. So happy reading. Like I said, make sure that you guys have that test completed by Sunday night. And I will see some of you tomorrow morning. For everybody else, sleep in. Enjoy your weekend. See you guys.